All right, so everything we've been talking about so far has been primarily focused around the Azure Virtual Networks and all the great software-defined networking services that we can build out there. But often we still want to connect that Azure network to our on-premises data center. And so we have a number of hybrid connectivity options available to us from Microsoft. First one, and very common, is site-to-site VPN. This is how a lot of people get going before they're ready to commit to something larger. And essentially, this involves connecting your data center over a VPN device to Azure. The next one is ExpressRoute, which is kind of what people mature and gravitate towards as they adopt a lot of Azure and decide, okay, I'm ready for a dedicated circuit. Maybe I'm doing a large scale migration. Maybe I've got a lot of data to access on premises and in the public cloud, and I've got apps running everywhere. I really want Azure to feel like a permanent extension of my data center, and ExpressRoute is a good method for that. And the third one is point to site, which is a very easy way to connect, say, your laptop directly into a virtual network. And we're going to cover all of these in a little bit more detail as we go through the module. So let's begin with site-to-site VPN, and you can see a couple of examples on screen right now. But let's just take a look at the top one first of all and focus on the basics of a site-to-site VPN. Well, on the one side, we have our data center, in this case on premises. It's got its own IP range. And on the other side, we have Azure with a VPN gateway. And essentially, we just want to connect these two together. We have to have a public IP on the right-hand side. You can see there we've got that VPN VIP. And on the right-hand side, we've got our VPN VIP there. And what we do then is we create an IPsec IKE S2S VPN tunnel between the two, and now they are connected. Now we can also do this across multiple sites, as I mentioned, so we could have multiple data centers with their own networks. Again, you can see in a lot of these examples, we don't have any overlap in address space because that's obviously not going to work from a routing perspective. But, multiple sites all connected in to the same VPN gateway. So there's a lot of flexibility there. If you've got a lot of offices or a lot of data centers that you want to connect in, you can do it that way. You could also create multiple VPN VIPs if you want to connect different offices into different VPN gateways and segments of Azure networks. You can really start to carve this out in multiple ways. If we look at some of those specifics, you definitely need to know for the exam, a site-to-site VPN gateway connection is a connection over IPsec/IKE. That's IKE version 1 or version 2. It requires a VPN device in your enterprise data center that has a public IP address assigned to it. It cannot be located behind a NAT, and site-to-site connections can be used for cross-premises and hybrid configurations. If you definitely take one thing away, remember those 4 points for the exam. If we look at point to site, then in contrast, this is really about connecting clients directly into the network. So you can see on screen there, we have a number of VPN client users, on the right-hand side, and they could be a mixture of laptop, remote workers, could be people at their desks. But essentially, they've got a few options there. They can do an SSTP or IKE version 2 tunnel, as you see on the screen there, into the VPN gateway. Now, that's just like VPNing into your corporate network. When you want to access network resources in your corporate network, you might VPN in there. Well, same thing here. You're just VPNing into Azure, and now you have access to your resources in the Azure network. The one thing I will say about this is a lot of people use this in conjunction with, say, a jump box. You might VPN in, connect to a jump box, run it from there, or potentially look at some of the new services like Citrix and Microsoft's RDMI and things like that that'll coming out. There's a lot of ways to kind of solve these scenarios. And I'll bring that up because there's a few things you definitely need to know, especially for the exam here. Obviously, we understand it's a secure connection from an individual computer, and it's great for remote worker situations. There's no need for a VPN device or public IP. We can connect wherever we have an internet connection. OS support is something we have to consider, so it's all Windows support primarily at the moment. Throughput and scale is the big thing, though, that we have to be concerned about. Throughput's up to 100 megabits per second, and this is unpredictable due to the internet, and it just doesn't scale easily. This is difficult to manage. It's really only useful for a few workstations that you might want to connect in this manner. Now, in addition, you also need to know about the different VPN gateway SKUs that are available to you. So if you look at the bottom there, starting with the basic SKU, it has a maximum of 10 tunnels available. For the point-to-site connections, it's 128 across all of the SKUs. But the other big difference, if you look at the basic one, it really has a maximum throughput of 100 megabits a second, so that's not very much. You really have to get into VPN gateway 1, 2, or 3, where they start at 650 meg, going up to 1 gigabits a second on VPN gateway 2, 1.25 on VPN Gateway 3, and those gateways allow for the max of 30 tunnels, so a lot more flexibility. If you look at it from a recommendation standpoint, pretty much if it's a production critical workload, you're not going to use the basic. You're just going to pick the VPN gateway SKU that meets your throughput requirements. If it's dev test or proof of concept, then sure, the basic SKU is fine. And then at the bottom there, you can also see we've got the SKU, whether it's basic or the VPN gateways, and just the features on the right hand side. So if you see a few things there on the basic SKU, policy-based VPN does not support point to site. I already mentioned it's kind of 10 tunnels maximum. When we're looking at route-based VPN, the policy-based is only 1 tunnel. And then if we look at the VPN gateway SKUs, again, up to 30 tunnels, point to site, BGP is supported, so that's the border gateway protocol for routing. And you've also got custom IPsec, IKE policies, express route VPN can coexist. So we could have like an express route connection with a VPN failover as well. So that's kind of just a summary of your gateway recommendations there. Now, if we want something a little bit more dedicated, a little bit more private, better guaranteed throughput, we can move up to something like ExpressRoute. And this essentially is a dedicated circuit between us and Microsoft Azure, and it works in a number of steps. So first of all, we have our network on the left-hand side. We're going to choose a partner to work with who's going to provide that connection all the way across to the Microsoft Edge. And then we have the flexibility of looking at the private services or the public services available to us in Azure. And that's really important. If we look at the private services, this allows us to connect directly to anything we've created like VNets, etc. in Azure. The public services, in contrast, this is things like Office 365, as well as services like blob storage, PAS SQL services, Power BI, etc. These are kind of those services that are publicly exposed in a public address space, and we can choose to have those connected to our circuit, if we want to or not. Now, in addition, you've got some connectivity models that you need to choose between. There's 3 major ones available. One, very common now, is a lot of people have started to use these cloud exchanges in a colo location. That could be like an Equinix facility as an example, and they will provide the cloud exchange for you and connect you into Microsoft Azure. We could do a dedicated point-to-point Ethernet connection that could be set up with our partner, and they would help facilitate that. Or we could do something like an any-to-any IP VPN connection over a MPLS WAN type scenario. If we look at the key benefits of ExpressRoute, and there are definitely many here, but let's just hit on some of the main ones. Well, first of all, this is now providing layer 3 connectivity between our on-premises network and Microsoft Azure's network. So adds a lot of flexibility in allowing us to share resources between the 2 data centers. It allows connectivity in all regions, so to every Microsoft Cloud service across all regions in the geopolitical region. But in addition, you can add on ExpressRoute Premium add-on, and this allows to Microsoft services across all regions with that add-on, so global connectivity at that point. In addition, we've got dynamic routing, so this uses BGP, so this is the industry standard protocol, so between our network and Microsoft, we have that all built in, and there's built-in redundancy. So in every peering location, Microsoft is ensuring redundancy of hardware at every single point along the way, so we don't need to worry about that in addition. Okay, so you've decided you want to move up to ExpressRoute, but what does it take to get all of this provisioned? Well, there is a bit of a process, and it can take many months sometimes for this to be completed. This isn't as simple as just going into Azure and clicking new service and it's up and running. There's data center work that has to be done. And so there is a workflow. Let's just kind of walk through that. First of all, ensure your prerequisites are met. So you need to have a connectivity provider identified and set up a business relationship with them. Make sure you have your Azure subscription, and you have to set up physical connectivity with your provider as well. Then you go about ordering your ExpressRoute circuit. You're going to select things like your peering location, your bandwidth, your billing model, and whether or not using the standard or the premium SKU. Next, the service provider is going to provision that connectivity. You're going to provide them with some information. There's a service key you have to give them. They're going to provide you with information and get that connected. You'll work together to establish that connection. And then you can start using your ExpressRoute circuit, and you can link your VNets to Azure private peering. You can link to public peering. All of that suddenly becomes available to you. Now, in addition, it's worth noting some of the data that you have to collect. And some things here are very, very important, because for private peering, public peering, and Microsoft peering, you're going to have to create some /30 subnets for your path. So for path 1 is a /30, and for path 2 is a /30. That's for private peering. For public peering, it's the same, but you must have a public IP, and same for Microsoft peering as well. So these are pieces of information you have to have on hand in order to be able to establish that circuit. And now it's very important just to know about the /30. Often in the exam, you'll get some questions around space and subnetting, and just knowing around, that those require /30s is very, very important. If we kind of look at one other aspect of this, there's the concept of unlimited versus metered. So if we look at unlimited, first of all, speeds from 50 megabits a second to 10 gigabits a second, you have unlimited inbound data transfer, unlimited outbound data transfer, but you do pay a higher monthly fee for this unlimited option. Now, naturally, if you look at the metered option, well, you still got the same speeds, so you can go from 50 to 10 gigabits a second. You've still got unlimited inbound data transfer, but the big difference is the outbound data transfer is charged at a predetermined rate for gigabyte. Now, there's a lower monthly fee for that, obviously, because you're sacrificing that outbound unlimited data transfer. And, obviously there, if you bring in data in and you're just moving into Azure, metered may be the way to go. But if you foresee a lot of traffic going both ways and just watch for questions on this, then, the unlimited option would be better for you. So to end off, let's just take a look at some of the ExpressRoute considerations. There's three major areas. One, just understand the model. So the difference between unlimited data and metered data. If you're trying to do this in your own data center, understand what model you're using today to accelerate adoption, understand the differences in port speeds, locations, and approach, things like that. Understand the providers and what they offer. And finally, understand the costs. If you think of these three things, models, providers, costs, you'll be well on your way to being able to answer any of the ExpressRoute questions they might throw at you. And with that, this ends this module. Hopefully this gives you a good background on everything you need to know from a connectivity standpoint. Like I said in the exam, the questions will be focused around you picking probably the right SKUs around the VPN gateway, so definitely know those. Choosing between ExpressRoute connection versus site-to-site, when to use point-to-site, things like that are likely to come up. And with that, that's the end. Thank you.